Hello everyone and welcome to the NinjaTrader Ecosystem webinar room. My name is Tiffany Sampson and I work for NinjaTrader in our Denver office. We have a very special event for you today with Steve of Ninja Mastery. I'd like to mention that it is important to understand that there are substantial risks in trading commodity future contracts and Forex. You should carefully consider whether such trading is suitable for you and will depend on your specific circumstances and financial resources. It is possible to lose all funds deposited with your broker and could even incur losses beyond these amounts. Please inquire at the link for more information or for a copy of the full CFTC full risk disclosure. Also, please remember that these training webinars are not a solicitation nor a recommendation, but simply education in nature. This presentation is presented by NinjaTrader LLC, which is a technology company responsible for developing and supporting the NinjaTrader trading software. Brokerage-related questions should be directed to NinjaTrader Brokerage directly at the information provided. With new tools added nearly every day, NinjaTrader Ecosystem is home to hundreds of apps and services. You can quickly and easily find the tools and services you're looking for with a quick keyword search. You'll also find information about upcoming webinars and on-demand video archive to view event recordings at the following link. Also, if you are active on social media, please ensure to like or follow us for the best ways to get updates on all things NinjaTrader at the following links. NinjaTrader is always free for advanced charting, strategy backtesting, and trade stimulation. To ensure that you are in the latest version of NinjaTrader and to pick up a free live data trial, please visit the following link. You can purchase or lease NinjaTrader at the following link. And if you are just getting started with NinjaTrader, we offer free live training on a daily basis. You can view a schedule of weekly webinars at the following link. We're very excited for this unique event in which Steve will demonstrate the benefits of using Visual Studio with NinjaTrader. Thanks again for your attendance today, and without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome to the NinjaTrader webinar room, Steve. Take it away, Steve.
All right, thank you. It is a pleasure to be here today, and I just want to welcome everybody out there who's listening to the webinar live, and also those of you who may be listening to a recorded version of this webinar. So I want to dive right in. We have a lot to cover, and let's get to our first slide here. Okay, I want to begin with a question. Do 95% of traders really fail? Now, you've probably heard this question before. You've probably heard some people say, maybe 95%, maybe 90%, but is it really true? Is there any evidence to back this up? And why do I care? Well, I care because I don't want to be in the 95% who fail if this question is true. I want to be in that 5% who actually are able to generate profits from trading. But how do I do that? Well, we're going to get to that. First, I want to try to answer this question. So there was a research paper that I ran across where they actually did research on real data from a real stock exchange. Now, this is a little hard to come by. You don't necessarily see a lot of research like this, probably because stock exchanges tend not to release their data very much. But as you can see here, the research found that 1% of day traders were able to profit consistently. So that's actually worse than 95% of traders failing. Only 1% are succeeding. So if you're a day trader, you're considering day trading, these are your odds. You know, this is what you're up against. And I suspect for swing traders, this number is a little better, but it's probably still not much more than 5% of traders who find success even swing trading. So how are you going to ensure that you're in that 5%? You have to have an edge, some kind of an edge. You have to do the things that the 95% aren't doing, and you have to do the things that the 5% are doing. So one of the ways not to do this is to walk out on a cliff and take more risk. Now, you've probably heard people say that risk and reward go hand in hand, and that's true to some degree and in the right context, but it doesn't mean that taking more risk means that you're automatically going to get more reward. So I know a lot of people think that they just need to go out there and trade with gusto, and that is what's going to make them successful, because they're not going to get those rewards if they don't take the risk. No pain, no gain. But that's really not true. And you really do need an edge, some sort of an edge. You need to be doing things that other people aren't doing. I think there are many ways you can gain an edge. Obviously, your actual strategies need to have some kind of an edge, but one way to get closer to those strategies that are better than the strategies of other people is to have proficiency in a tool like NinjaTrader that allows you to test everything for yourself. And that last part is key: test everything for yourself. Now, one of my mantras is trust no one, not even yourself. Test everything. So you can only test things for yourself if you have the tools and the skills to do that. So that's why we're talking about this subject of NinjaTrader and Visual Studio today, because this is how you get that edge. This is how you get that ability to test things for yourself. And frankly, even if you're a discretionary trader, or that's what you want to be, you're going to benefit, and frankly, it may even be required for you to test your strategies. I think you've got it's my opinion, you've got a much better chance of finding success as a trader if you're testing things. Because, I say here, trust no one, not even yourself. Just because you think something should work doesn't mean it will. Just because somebody else told you something should work doesn't mean it will. And it may have worked one time, but it may not work now. It may work on their system, but it may not work on yours, because there can be slight differences that can affect how strategies perform and behave. So I want to introduce you today to Visual Studio. And the reason here is because with NinjaTrader and Visual Studio, we get a really powerful system that allows us to write our own strategies, write our own indicators, test our strategies, and determine whether those strategies have any merit or not. And you can do all of this inside NinjaTrader alone, but what Visual Studio does for you is it allows you to maximize the power of NinjaTrader and give you quite a few more features that will help you along in your programming and just in organizing your efforts. So what is Visual Studio? I know I'm sure we've got a very diverse audience. I suspect we have some that are professional programmers who may actually even write C# code inside Visual Studio, and that's what I've done for many years. We probably also have a few people that have never written any code at all. So I'm going to try to walk this line between explaining things. It's probably in the middle. If you don't know anything at all, some of this may seem over your head, but I'm going to share with you where you can get a little more information. If you're a professional developer, some of it may seem a little bit simple. That's fine. Hopefully there are a few things here that maybe you haven't heard of or haven't seen before. So what is Visual Studio? It's just a software program. Anybody can install it on their computer. And it is a professional IDE. And an IDE is an integrated development environment. And Visual Studio itself is probably used by literally millions of programmers every single day. And it allows them to more efficiently and more productively write software. So this presentation today is going to be a high-level overview of what benefits you can get by using Visual Studio and in conjunction with NinjaTrader. Now, there are several versions of Visual Studio. The only one that you actually need is the community version. And this brings us to our first benefit. The first benefit of using Visual Studio with NinjaTrader is the fact that Visual Studio is completely free. And we're talking a professional IDE that generates billions of dollars for Microsoft in revenue every year. So you're getting all the benefits of this professional, expensive development environment for free. All you have to do is register after you download and install it, and you'll have a perpetual license. So in order to download it, for those of you who don't actually have it already, just go to visualstudio.com and you'll see a page like this one. So on the left, you can see we have the Visual Studio box here. And next to it is one called Visual Studio Code, and you see I've X'd it out. Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code are both IDEs. They're both software programs for writing software. And Microsoft makes them both. And they're both quite popular. But Visual Studio Code is not the one you want. Maybe if you're already a very experienced professional developer with Visual Studio Code, you might be able to make it work. But let's forget that one for now. For most people, if you're unsure at all, use Visual Studio. All right, before I talk about myself, let's go over and take a look at Visual Studio. So here is Visual Studio on my screen currently, and I have opened over here in what's called the Solution Explorer, a solution, and in that solution is a project, and that project is called NinjaTrader.custom. Now that is a project, an official Visual Studio project that gets installed when you install NinjaTrader. So if I right-click on this and open my folder, you can see I'm in Documents, NinjaTrader 8, Bin, Custom. Now if you have NinjaTrader 8 installed, you will have this same folder. And if you go in, you'll see essentially the same files. I have a few extra files in here that you probably don't. But if you go down here, you can see we have ninjatrader.custom.csproj. Well, that's what's open right here. So if you wanted to open it in Visual Studio, you would just go File, Open, and navigate to that csproj file. And then when you open it, it's going to look like this. And you notice we've got add-ons, bars types, indicators, strategies. Under strategies, for example, we have the sample moving average crossover. So let's compare this to NinjaTrader itself. In NinjaTrader, we have a similar set of folders, add-ons, bars types, indicators, strategies. So you can see that these two things are mirrored in Visual Studio and in NinjaTrader. They are literally looking at the exact same files. You can see here the simple moving average crossover strategy is located right there. All right. Okay, so who am I? Well, I'm Dr. Steve Lautenschlager. I have a PhD in particle physics from Duke University. As part of my research, I excuse me, I spent time at CERN, the International Center for Particle Physics, where I did my thesis research. It is located outside of Geneva, Switzerland, a beautiful part of the country, if any of you are from that area. Well, I should say a beautiful part of the world. And I also have worked at Microsoft. I was a systems engineer for Microsoft for a couple of years, and that's when I really got introduced to their products and tools. And it's my opinion that they're among the best development tools available, and there are many, but I really do love the Microsoft tools, and you get them for free, so it's great. I also have recently created a new little company called Ninja Mastery, and you can see more about that at ninjamastery.net. And you see the URL in the lower right corner there. It says ninjamastery.net/training. If you visit that URL, you will see some of the courses that I have available. And I'll highlight two main courses here. So the course that's most related to this webinar presentation is Power Up NinjaTrader 8 with Visual Studio Integration. So if you have questions after this webinar, obviously you can ask some questions as well, but if you really want to learn the how of doing many of the things that I'm talking about today, this course will walk you through it. So if you just go to that URL in the lower right corner, you'll be able to learn more about this course and actually see the full list of the curriculum and what is covered in that course. I also have a free course available called NinjaTrader Kickstart. So if you are new to NinjaTrader, it would be, well, advisable, I would say, to go take this course. And maybe even if you've been using NinjaTrader a little while, there are probably some things you could still learn from this. This NinjaTrader Kickstart, I call it the super simple 7-step guide to getting started with NinjaTrader. And it's really the course that I wish I'd had when I started working with NinjaTrader. I tried to take all the questions that I had and put them together and give you answers to just get you up and running more quickly instead of, groping around for information. And while NinjaTrader provides an incredible amount of information, in fact, in this course, I'll show you exactly where to go to get access to all of that information that NinjaTrader provides. So there's no obligation to take that course. It is free. You don't even have to sign up for my email list. So I invite you to go take advantage of that. All right, so benefit number 2 of using Visual Studio with NinjaTrader. You can create your own code libraries. And these code libraries can then be integrated into NinjaTrader. And this is one of the main reasons I use this, because I do write some of my own code. And I know some of you are probably very experienced developers, and so you may do this. Some of you aren't, and you probably won't need to do this, but it is one of the benefits. And I'd like to show you my projects with my custom code. Okay, so here's Visual Studio, and I have a solution I call NM, which is just short for Ninja Mastery. And if you look here, each of these items is a project. If we expand one, I'll call this nm.corelab. And here we have a variety of other folders, and we'll look under, say, extensions. So I've got a file here called datetime extensions. And this is just some, if you're not familiar with CSharp, this is extensions are ways of adding functionality to existing classes. The datetime is an existing class. And so I've added quite a few features here that I use. End of day, end of week, end of month. These are some things you might be, a person might want to use in strategy development. Okay, let's jump back to our slides. Benefit number 3, managing extra files. So in your work, as you're trying to develop strategies and indicators, you can generate a lot of content. There are a lot of notes you might need. This is an actual screenshot of some of my actual notes. And what you can see, maybe, I don't know if it's big enough, depends on your screen size, but what we're looking at here is, it's a markdown file. So if you're familiar with markdown, you understand this. If not, markdown is just a way of writing plain text that can then be rendered, like on the right side, as a web page, HTML web page. So on the left, we have this simultaneous orders, and we have this number sign in front of it. Well, that tells us that this should be rendered as a title. And on the right-hand side, we see that simultaneous orders is rendered as a title. So this is just a nice way to keep some notes, and you can keep all of that inside of Visual Studio. And let me just demo that. So here, well, I need to look at the custom project. So under the custom project, under the add-ons folder, I have a notes folder, and I put all kinds of stuff under here. And you can see I use a lot in the form of text files. I think, yeah, here's the markdown file that I was just showing you. And if I open that up, you can see we have the text on the left and we have the HTML display on the right. So the whole point here is that this is just a nice way to organize all those extra files that you're probably creating as you're taking notes and developing strategies and keeping spreadsheets and that sort of thing. In fact, I think I have a spreadsheet here. Yeah, under performance. So I save Excel files as well, and I can just include them in the project. And from here, I can actually double-click this performance spreadsheet. And you can see this is clearly a summary of a typical NinjaTrader performance report. This wasn't a particularly good one, so I think maybe I just saved it as an example. Okay. Okay, it looks like some have said they weren't seeing my screen. Oh, yeah, I apologize. I think maybe I didn't click the screen sharing properly. Okay, are you seeing it now? I hope so. This is what I just described, okay? This is the markdown here on the left, and on the right you see the HTML version of it. And here I'm clicking on an Excel spreadsheet and it pulls up the performance report. Okay, did that help? Okay, good, thank you. All right, now we should be back on the slides. All right, benefit number 4. You can create add-on projects using Visual Studio that you can use inside of NinjaTrader. So what is an add-on project? An add-on project um, allows you to extend the behavior of NinjaTrader to adding, you can add menu items, you can add additional windows that you might open up. And here are a couple of little screenshots showing on the left an add-on project located inside of our Visual Studio program. And then the right is just a window that is generated from this add-on project. And I'm going to demonstrate this in a minute. NinjaTrader provides a sample project for creating add-ons, and you can find that at this URL at the bottom. But let's take a look at what actually happens when we create this add-on and include it inside of Visual Studio. Okay, so this time I remembered to click screen sharing. And if we go over to NinjaTrader here, and I click on New, and I scroll down here, that add-on project, once I included it, the way I included it was right-clicking on the NinjaScript editor, selecting References, and then navigating to my custom project area and selecting NinjaTrader add-on project.dll. That is the output from Visual Studio of our add-on project. And then you do a recompile of NinjaTrader, and now that add-on is going to be integrated into your NinjaTrader system. And if we go down here, we see a menu item called Add-on Framework, and if we click that, it brings up that window that we saw a screenshot of earlier. And if we click Connect Kinetic End of Day, that connects us to the end of day data. So we're able to do this from an add-on. This is something that doesn't come with NinjaTrader, right? This is something you've created. And there's just, now this requires obviously a little more development skill, but it's just one of the things, additional things that you can do with Visual Studio. All right, let's head back to our slides. Okay, benefit number 5. When using Visual Studio with NinjaTrader, you also get access to project management tools in Azure DevOps. So what is Azure DevOps? Well, we've got a URL here that says dev.azure.com. And once you've registered your version of Visual Studio Community, if you go over to dev.azure.com and log in with that same login that you used to register Visual Studio, you're going to get access to a whole bunch of free tools. And among them are project management tools. And what we see here is a Kanban board for managing work items. And this is actually a screenshot from some of my actual work that I do related to NinjaTrader. So this Kanban board allows me on the left, I just create new items, and then as I progress through the process of completing those items, I drag them into additional columns. And many of you are probably familiar with project management tools like this. But it's completely free, and they're extremely good tools, right? Companies actually pay for this, whereas this is all freely available to you as an individual. So that's another nice feature. Okay, benefit number 6, version control. We have the ability, if you're a professional coder which I suspect most of you are not, if you're a professional coder, then you know what version control is, and you know it's indispensable if you're doing any programming. Version control allows you to keep track of all the changes that you've made to all of your files. And you can see in the screenshot, I have these little blue lock icons next to each file, except one of them has a little red check mark. Well, that tells me I have a current change to that file, and it reminds me that I need to check that change in. So we have available to us a couple of different types of code repositories, and again, they're all free, which is amazing. So this, if you don't know what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about version control, number one, understand this is way better than, say, change tracking in Microsoft Word. And for any kind of serious development, it's definitely indispensable. But this is also something I go through in quite a bit of detail in the course that I mentioned earlier. So if you want any details, you can go check that out. But we have GitHub and Microsoft Azure DevOps. We have URLs for both of those. In both cases, these are free, and you can interact with them through Visual Studio, and Visual Studio makes this extremely easy to do. Okay, this is an example inside Visual Studio of my check-in history for my version control. So I may work for a couple of hours, and then I've made some changes during that time, and then I'll just check in those changes, and when I do, I'll leave a brief little comment. So you can see I just record a little one sentence to remind me what I was working on there. So down here it says position stats, or done with position stats, merged from a branch, commented an indicator. So it's just a nice thing. You can look back and see what you did, or if you change something and suddenly it's not working, you can go back and see where you changed it and what actually changed. So it's a great feature. This is just a screenshot from the website, Azure DevOps website, where you can actually see another web-based summary of all of your code changes. And one thing I like is this graph here, where you can see it's just a straight line, but then it has some little lines that diverge out to the right and then merge back in. Well, those were cases where I created branches, made a bunch of changes in those branches, and then merged back into the master. And that's a great way, for those of you who do some programming, you might be familiar with this. It's a really great way to manage your work and your efforts. But again, I know for those of you who aren't familiar with all of this, it may be a little bit confusing at this point, but like I said, my course would cover that in more detail if you're interested. Not everybody's going to need all of these features by any means. All right, benefit number 7. You can create unit tests for your custom code libraries. Again, this is a feature that I think any serious programmer probably would be interested in, but maybe not unless if you're not a real serious programmer, you might not be so interested. But unit tests just make your code more robust and easier to develop and maintain. You can't actually, for those who are wondering, you can't actually create unit tests for the NinjaTrader.custom project itself. There might be you might be able to figure out how to do this, but it's not straightforward. But you certainly can for your own custom projects that you might be using and referencing inside of NinjaTrader. But I have lots of unit tests on my code, and it just gives you some peace of mind when you make a change that you run the test and all the tests pass, and gives you peace of mind that everything's still working. So here's an example of some code with a unit test, and it looks a lot like regular code, but the differences are it's got this test class attribute above the class name, and then a method here in the green box has a test method attribute above the method, just to tell Visual Studio this is a test. And then when you tell Visual Studio to run your test, it will run this code. And if the code does not succeed, then it'll give you a notification to let you know that that test did not pass. And here's an example from my own code, and this is Visual Studio. On the right, you can see all these guys circled in the green oval. These are my test projects. So you have a project with C# code in it, and then each one of those projects, I have a corresponding test project, and all my test code is there in those projects. Now, this is good practice. It's certainly not necessary, and it's probably overkill for the majority of people, but it is a potential benefit. Definitely, if you're interested in coding, this is something that you probably ultimately, maybe in the long run, something that you would start to implement. Okay, benefit number 8. This is a useful one, and I call it, it's a little hard to read some of that, but using Nougat packages. So what's Nougat? What's a package? Well, um, Nougat packages are essentially free code libraries, and many of these are free on from the nougat.org. Many companies create these, sometimes individuals create these. On the right-hand side, you can see a screenshot from the website where I just typed in statistics. And this first one that comes up is called accord.statistics, and it's been downloaded over 500,000 times, and it provides all sorts of things like probability distributions, statistical models, and such. Well, those are definitely ways you can start to get an edge on other people, because a lot of people aren't going to be using tools like this to create strategies. You can create statistical-based strategies, and you can use some free library like this to do it. Now, there's obviously work involved in doing that, but you have all these options available to you. Okay, yeah, you can manage these directly in Visual Studio. All you have to do is right-click the project and select Manage Nougat Packages. When you do have a Nougat package, the way to include it in Ninja Mastery is to right-click in the code editor and select References. Okay, benefit number 9, increase productivity. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on these, but I just want to mention them so you're kind of aware of what's possible. So first of all, you have Visual Studio extensions. So you have the ability to add all kinds of additional features in Visual Studio through the form of extensions. And CodeMade, for example, is one that I use extensively. And what it does is with some keystrokes, it will reorganize all of my code in a file. So it might make it alphabetical, it'll group similar things together. And that just makes it easier when later on when I'm going to find something, I know, okay, this is going to be alphabetical or this is going to be grouped here. Visual Studio, especially the latest version, Visual Studio 2019, has some phenomenal search capabilities. It also has powerful IntelliSense, although this is something NinjaTrader has as well. Let me make sure I show my screen. Okay. If we go into the NinjaTrader editor here, let's see if we can get an example here. So when you start typing something, when I hit that dot, it gives me a whole bunch of options. What are the possibilities here on this object? So, I've got properties, is suspended, is visible, description, and that's just, you don't know how, well, maybe you do, how nice that is to have IntelliSense, because that way you don't have to remember everything. You just go in and use that. And this is also available in Visual Studio, and it's a pretty sophisticated feature. So if we were here and we type DT, which is our object name, then we also get a list of all the properties and methods that are available there. Okay. Moving on this list, we have code. So Visual Studio offers code suggestions for improving your code, refactoring. What is refactoring? Refactoring, well, the simplest form of refactoring is, say, renaming something. So let's say you've got something in your code that is used in 10 places and you decide you want to change the name. Well, it'd be a real pain to have to go around and change that name in every single spot. So if you just right-click on the name, select refactor, type a new name, Visual Studio is smart enough to know everywhere that that's used, and it'll just rename it for you. It's an incredible time-saving feature. Okay, you also have the ability to control the look and feel of Visual Studio, other customizations, code lens, which is just insight into your codes. Like this little gray text here is what's called code lens. Tells me the last time I changed this particular method, this print method, was 16 days ago, and I have 0 references, and I'm the last one who touched it. And then the syntax highlighting, which is the coloring and bolding. That just makes things a little easier to view and understand. In fact, syntax highlighting even happens sort of unconsciously. You start to expect it to be a certain way, and when it's not, it sort of triggers something in your mind that says there's something wrong with this code. So that's a neat feature. Syntax highlighting to a lesser degree is also present in the NinjaTrader code editor. All right, I have 9.1, benefit 9.1 for using Visual Studio with NinjaTrader. And this is just a screenshot of using extensions. So if you select extensions from the main menu and then manage extensions, you'll see something like this. And I mentioned CodeMade a little bit earlier, the highlighted item here. That is the extension, and it shows that it's currently installed in my system. And there are hundreds of free extensions out there to do all sorts of things that you might want to do. Okay, last, but certainly not least, in fact, this may be the most important reason that you would want to use Visual Studio. In fact, I suspect a lot of people might use Visual Studio, and this would be the only thing that they would do with it, and these other 9 features might not be that important to them. So this is definitely a really significant benefit of Visual Studio. You can't do this inside NinjaTrader by itself. And debugging allows you to step through code line by line while it's executing. So in this case, if you just put a debug point or a stop point is that little red circle. And this is a screenshot of when the debugger has actually stopped on this line of code. And when it does, I can go and I can hover over these variables and properties and look at their values. And I can see if their values are what they should be or what I think they should be. This saves an incredible amount of time. Short of this, the only thing you can really do is use print statements and look at the output in NinjaTrader. And that works, and that works perfectly well, but it's time consuming and it's a little harder to do. This is a really nice benefit of using Visual Studio with NinjaTrader. Okay, so what next? So we've covered at least 10 and maybe 11 if you can count 9.1. We've covered quite a few benefits, and there really are even more than this, of using Visual Studio with NinjaTrader. Now, I know that not everyone out there is going to want to use all of these, but hopefully what we've accomplished here is that you are now aware of what's possible. And if you want to know more about how to do these things, and I've shown you the what of it, what you can do. If you want to know more about how to do many of these things, I don't cover all of them, but if you follow this link below, you can go and you can see a list of the subjects that are covered in this course. And again, don't forget the free course, NinjaTrader Kickstart, that can help to get you started with NinjaTrader. All right, so that covers everything. And at this point, do you have anything to add, Tiffany?
I do not at this time. Do you want to go through and answer some questions? It looks like a few have come through in the last few minutes.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll go back and look at our questions list and see if you have questions. You can go ahead and type some of those in, and I'll see if I can address some of these. If you have no coding experience, this is from Ron, will your program teach me to code indicators? My course, the Power Up NinjaTrader 8 course, does not necessarily teach you to program indicators. What it does is it teaches you how to use NinjaTrader, or sorry, it teaches you how to use Visual Studio with NinjaTrader to do many of these things I showed. Now, I do simple examples. In fact, I do cover a simple indicator example. So you would be able to create an indicator following that example, but it doesn't cover all the various aspects of creating indicators. Okay, looking through the list still. Okay, so Bruce asked, can you discuss the path to running backtests on our strategies and how to optimize them? I know this is an NinjaTrader question, but it's a primary goal. You are absolutely right. It is a primary goal. Um, so the path to running backtests. Well, I would invite you to go sign up for that free NinjaTrader Kickstart course. Now what this is going to do is it shows you how to run backtests. It doesn't show you how to do it in NinjaTrader. Now, I don't actually remember. I'm pretty sure I probably cover this in the Power Up NinjaTrader course. The path to running backtests. That's just a little bigger topic, I think, than I can answer right here. So I do invite you. I do cover many of those aspects in these courses. Do I have experience? This from Jim. Do I have experience using NinjaTrader 8's volumetrics methods for clients? I can't say that I do. Sorry. Okay, here's a great question. Don asks, hi, how safe is it to store your source code in GitHub? Is there any issue of someone getting into your code that is stored in GitHub? This is a great question. So I am fairly tuned in to the development community. I have never heard of a situation where somebody's code got leaked when it was in a private repository or hacked. I mean, it could be hacked if you didn't have a good password probably, but I'm sure unless you're a famous company or a famous person, people probably aren't trying to hack your particular account, although maybe. Just always make sure you have good passwords. Incidentally, Microsoft owns GitHub. They bought GitHub a few years ago. And so whether you use GitHub or you use the Microsoft source code repositories, both are essentially run by Microsoft or owned at least by Microsoft. I feel very confident putting my code. I use the Microsoft source control rather than GitHub, but I feel very safe putting my code into those environments. I've never heard of a breach from those source code repositories. And I think it's well worth having your code backed up in another place offsite. In case your computer goes down or something, there's a peace of mind there knowing that your code is still safe out there. And these are people, these are companies, Microsoft spending millions and millions of dollars every year to make sure that they have, you're getting the same level of service when you do this that large enterprise companies are getting. So and you're getting it for free. So it's really fantastic. Okay, still reading through the questions here. Is Visual Studio able to examine or watch NinjaScript series variables? Yes. So if you were, say, running a backtest and you put a breakpoint into, say, the on-bar update method, the code will stop execution at that point, and you can look at what the various current status of any variables are. If you buy the course, can you ask questions if you get stuck? Absolutely. Peter W. is asking. Absolutely. In fact, in the course, you can leave a comment down below, and if you have a question, I will go in and I will answer that. I'll be notified if you leave a question. Below the course materials, there's like a question and answer area. But also, you can always email me at support@ninjamastery.net or send me a message. Some people send a message through the contact form on my website at ninjamastery.net. And I've gotten some people through some stuck points, and so I'm absolutely available to answer your questions. have I coded for custom bars types? Whoops, it just moved. Okay, let's see if I get back to that question. Okay, I've lost the bars types questions. I think the question was, have I coded bars types? Um, I've looked into that a little bit. I haven't coded any custom bars types. I've used some other people's custom bars types. Um, but that's not covered in any of these courses. It's a pretty advanced NinjaScript concept. I'm sure there's probably some information out there on it. Okay, Gary asked, when I use Visual Studio to debug and then exit Visual Studio, it warns me that the project file has been changed. Is it safe to say yes? Yes, it is safe to say yes. And here's what's interesting. This is one of the quirks of using two programs on the same files at the same time. And this is something I cover in the course, but what's happening is Visual Studio is watching those files for changes, and NinjaTrader is sometimes changing those files. So both of the programs are sometimes changing those files. And when a file changes in NinjaTrader, Visual Studio is going to prompt you to say, there's been a change. What do you want to do? Well, pretty much you can say yes or no. It's really not going to matter which way, actually. Yes just tells Visual Studio to reload the file and accept any changes. But in fact, Visual Studio, because you're using them both at the same time, Visual Studio already knows that the file is changed. So whether you tell it yes or no, it doesn't really matter in this situation. So it's a bit of a redundant message. It's not going to hurt anything. Chris E. asks, how is the course tailored? Is it a set course, or do you tailor it to what we want? I would like to backtest my own custom strategies and also generate my own custom entry and exit signals for automated trading. Yeah, that's a great goal. And the course is a fixed course at this point, so it's not dynamic. Like I said, if you go to that URL in the lower right and click through to learn more, you scroll down a bit and you'll see a full curriculum of what's covered in the course, and hopefully that can help you see if this is what you want to do or not. I will say that this is not a course specifically for showing you how to create indicators and strategies and how to test them. Those are courses I want to create, but it takes a long time to create these courses as well. So, but we do go through very simple examples of indicators and an add-on, and I don't recall actually if I cover backtest, but you can see in that curriculum. So that some of that is a little beyond the scope of this course, but what I would say is that if you're really serious about creating your own indicators and backtests, you're going to find that there's a lot of benefit to being able to use Visual Studio at the same time you're using NinjaTrader, because Visual Studio, all of my coding that I do for NinjaTrader, I do in Visual Studio. I'm sure some people won't like to necessarily want to do that, but I just find it much, much easier and more powerful to do that in Visual Studio. And by the way, NinjaTrader's got a very nice editor, but Visual Studio is also really great, and I love to use it. Okay, here's a good question. What's the best way to learn C#? From Mark. That I've been really wanting to put together a course on C# for NinjaTrader, and do let me know if other people are interested in that, because there are many, there's all kinds of code, all kinds of lessons and learning out there on C#. Here's what I would recommend. Go to like udemy.com, udemy.com, and find a course that's highly rated on beginning C# or something like that. And these courses are phenomenally cheap. I mean, this is not going to help you learn anything about NinjaTrader, but you're going to use C# inside NinjaTrader. That's what you code with. NinjaScript is basically C# with all the additional benefits of NinjaTrader libraries. Okay. Gary asked, does NinjaTrader share that project, that CS proj file? Do they share it? Well, yes. If you have NinjaTrader and Visual Studio both open, they are sharing that project file. And that relates to the question that was asked a little earlier where they got a prompt that said, the project has changed, do you want to reload? So you might get a message like that in Visual Studio because NinjaTrader and Visual Studio are both operating on that same project. And they could, either one of them could end up changing the that project file. But they work together pretty nicely. You may get a few extra pop-ups here and there, but once you understand what they are, and again, I talk about that in the course. Okay, so Andrea says, I like InUnit. And so InUnit is another unit testing framework besides MS Test or Microsoft unit tests. You can use it in InUnit. Anything you can do in Visual Studio, essentially, you could still use that. So that'd be fine. Okay, and Raul says, I'm interested in Link. Yeah, Link is part of CSharp, actually, really. Well, the .NET libraries, and it just adds some incredible productivity to how you work with objects. So, yeah, fascinating. It's really well done by Microsoft. So I absolutely recommend learning some about that. You'll find it very useful in writing NinjaScripts.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Steve. I would like to give a special thank you to Steve again for a great presentation. Everyone in attendance here today will receive an on-demand recording of today's event. So keep an eye open for that email. NinjaTrader ecosystem is pleased to sponsor these weekly vendor events as a value-added service for our clients. If you find value in these events, we hope you will attend them on a regular basis. We would like to remind you the information provided in this was of Ninja Mastery and not of NinjaTraders. All information was for educational purposes and should not be construed as trading advice. Again, we appreciate the time you spend with us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you in future webinars. Happy trading from all of us at NinjaTrader ecosystem. And again, thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.